Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Gilded Hour by Sara. In The Gilded Hour by Sara, Dr. Anna Savard takes in two orphan girls and finds herself on a mission to find the girls' two missing brothers. Meanwhile, Detective Sergeant Jack Mezzanotte is on the hunt for a killer who is targeting women desperately seeking abortions. Anna and Jack's paths intertwine unexpectedly, and they find themselves growing closer as they traverse the splendor and poverty of 1880s New York City. So, first of all, I won this book through a Goodreads giveaway like super long time ago, you guys, and I do mean a super long time ago, and I am just now getting around to this book. But either way, thank you, Goodreads, for sending me this book. Before I get into the things that I really highly enjoyed about this novel, let me start with my big nitpick and thing that I was a little frustrated about with this book. I knew that this book, or rather this series, I knew that Sara wrote two books, but the way I was kind of thinking this was going to be, I was kind of under the impression that the second book in this duology, I guess I shall say, I was under the impression the second book probably could be a standalone and you wouldn't have to read the second book, because I do not own the second book at all. And so I've never really bothered to even pick up and purchase the second book. Because like I said, I kind of was under the assumption that this first book you could probably just read as a standalone and you wouldn't even need the second one. But boy, oh boy, was I mistaken. Because the big thing that's frustrating for me, there are a massive amount of, not necessarily cliffhangers, if you will, but just stories that just kind of abruptly kind of just ends, and you definitely got to read the next book to figure out where everything is going, like where the characters are going, where certain plot lines are going. It definitely leaves you hanging. So yeah, I'm a little frustrated about that, because I've had this book, like I said, I won this book through Goodreads a long time ago, and I just never bothered to pick up the second book, thinking I wouldn't need the second book. So yeah, when I finished this book, and there's just whole arcs that are not finished, character stuff that is not finished, I was just really frustrated, because it's like, well, I wish I had known that, because that way I could have binged the whole duology together, you know? Because now it's like I'll have to get the second book at some point, and I'll probably have to reread this book at some point, you know? Because I feel, it's like I feel obligated now that I have to pick up the second book. Book nerd problems, am I right? So yeah, that is just a personal complaint from me, that this book is not a standalone, because I would have really appreciated this book to just be a standalone, you know, like even if it was a couple hundred more pages, fine. I just don't think it was really necessary to kind of put it out into like a duology, if that makes sense. I think this book, just give it a couple more hundred more pages and finish the damn thing up. Okay, so my personal me issue aside with this book, I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. You guys, I was very pleasantly surprised. This book, there's a lot of intricacies. I'm trying to pronounce the word intricate. I'll put it that way, intricate, and try rather than trying to say the long version of it. There's a lot of stuff about this book that's really intricate, and there's a lot of plot threads and a lot of characters, and it kind of reaches a point in this novel. There's so much kind of going on, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, what is the point of all of this? And a lot of it comes together quite brilliantly kind of near the end, as things kind of start threading together, and you kind of have those moments, like, okay, this is the point of that character, that's the point of this plot and whatnot. Yeah, there's obviously got to be side plots and whatnot, but even sometimes some of the side plots kind of really weave in interesting ways to the main plot. I also really appreciated the rich historic research going on in this book. You can tell Sara did her research for America's Gilded Age, which is where this book is set. It's set in the Gilded Age, which is, you know, kind of like there in the 1800s into kind of a little bit of the 1900s for American history and whatnot. And yeah, this book takes place in the 1880s, and yeah, the Gilded Age is is, it's a really just insane time in American history, you know, because you have like the insane amount of like wealth and privilege going on, and the whole thing of new money and old money, and yeah, kind of just the start of like companies and business and whatnot, and it's insane, you know. But then yeah, you have all of that with all of this wealth and all these wealthy people, but then at the bottom of that is like the sheer amount of poverty also going on, the poverty, the homelessness, the amount of orphanages and whatnot, children just running around without no parents and whatnot. So it's a wild contrast, and this book does not shy away from that contrast of the wealthy versus the poor and whatnot. And what I also appreciated about this book, it's following two women who are doctors during this time period, which is practically unheard of. Now, yeah, there were definitely female doctors running around, but no one writes about them. So yeah, this book is definitely exploring that, following these two female doctors and the obstacles that they have to go through, and how men treat them in this profession, and yeah, even their patients, how their patients treat them, like once they see that they're a woman, you know. And it's following, one of the doctors is a wealthy white woman, and then the other doctor is like a cousin to this woman, and she's actually a woman of color. She is a woman who was born free, essentially. Like she is kind of, she's descended down from like slaves and whatnot, but she was born free herself, if I'm not mistaken, is how it goes in here. So yeah, that's another thing. Not only are there two female doctors in here, but one of them is a woman of color, which is fascinating, and I love that. So yeah, even though the white female doctor, even though she has her own challenges and obstacles that she has to face, yeah, her cousin, like I said, who is a woman of color, she definitely has her own branch of obstacles that she has to face as well. So it's a really nice balance in this book. So some of the plot going on in this novel definitely has to do with these two female doctors, and yeah, the one doctor, the white lady, she is actually, her whole big plot, she's having to deal with like some orphans. She takes in two little girls, but yeah, they're two brothers that they traveled with, because they came from Italy, if I'm not mistaken. They all migrated or immigrated from Italy. Somehow they all got separated. The two sisters wound up with the doctor, and the other two brothers are just kind of out and about, God knows where. So there's kind of that whole plot going on. And then another big, huge plot going on in this book. We have a detective sergeant in this book named Jack Mezzanotte. He himself is also Italian. His family long ago immigrated to America, so he has his own thing. Like, people looking at him because he's Italian, and there's like prejudices against him just because he's Italian. You know, it's just weird, because like during this time period, it's like if you were from, you know, Italy or Ireland, good God, if you were from Ireland, people hated you. So yeah, Jack Mezzanotte, even though he's a man in America, it's like no one likes him because he's Italian, you know. So yeah, one of his big plot points that he's dealing with in this book, it's slow going in this book, but it builds up that you start to realize there's got to be a serial killer running around, because Jack Mezzanotte and his partner, they're stumbling across these crime scenes where women, they had been gruesomely, brutally violated, and it looks like they've had abortions of some sort. So they start to get to the idea, once the bodies of these women start piling up, what they all have in common is that they were all trying to get abortions, and they were all trying to cover it up. And yeah, during the Gilded Age, obviously abortion's a big no-no. So that starts to be a big, huge pivotal plot in this, and you can kind of see how the two female doctors, you can kind of see how they start to weave into the narrative. Obviously, they're doctors. They deal with this sort of thing all the time. So the detectives need help figuring out, you know, the medical things going on here, and who could possibly be doing this, murdering these women. This book is very heavily focused as well on what was known as, I suppose, the suppression of vice, which was kind of dominated and run by a dude named Anthony Comstock. So yeah, the suppression of vice was basically kind of this whole thing during this time period, where like the morality, I suppose, the morality and ethics or whatever of the American people was like spied on and really investigated. You weren't allowed to do things that seemed indecent or improper, abortion being one of those things. Abortion was definitely illegal during this time period. So yeah, the whole suppression of vice was a big thing during this time period where you gotta kind of be careful what you're doing, because if the wrong people see you doing something you shouldn't be doing, it's going to go back to Anthony Comstock and you're going to get arrested or whatever. So yeah, that is definitely a big commentary for sure going on in this book. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot going on in this book. It's really intricate and it takes a while for all these various different threads to get going. But I really genuinely liked the sheer amount of things going on in this book. It's a pretty big, hefty book. I found myself really liking the characters. The characters are really nuanced. The plots are really nuanced. Once again, the historic research is so incredibly well done. You really feel like you're here in the Gilded Age of America. And this book, in the hands of some other author, this book could have felt overwhelming, but I don't think it ever felt overwhelming. I think everything kind of had its nice pace and flow to it. Everything was explained in its own proper time. And again, the Gilded Age of America is a complex time period. Again, the sheer amount of wealth on this side and the sheer amount of poverty on this side, and it just clashes. This book is definitely exploring class issues, the big, huge class divide. It's dealing with the rights of women, the rights of people of color, the rights of immigrants. And it's also fascinating, too, in this book because this is a time period where medical science is kind of just getting going in some ways. And people are really starting to examine the body more and look at how the body works and functions, and not just the body, but also just women's bodies as well. So I really loved kind of seeing that nuanced look at medical science during this time period. And it's still an experiment at this time period. It's still very much an experiment, and people are still trying to figure out the rights and the wrongs of the body and how that works and functions. And yeah, definitely, really importantly, like the function of women's bodies. So yeah, overall, this book was a really good time. I loved it. I cannot repeat enough how much I appreciated the historic research in this book, and yeah, focusing on two female doctors. If you love all things historical fiction, you're probably going to want to check this out, especially if you love all things like the Gilded Age. I love this time period in American history. Once again, my biggest complaint is that this is not a standalone. I would have really loved if this was a standalone, because now I feel obligated to see how things wind up, because it's left me at a cliffhanger in a sense, and I'm dying to know where things go. So you guys, that is it for my review and thoughts on The Gilded Hour by Sara Donati. In the comments below, let me know if you guys have read this book or not. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video. You may like these other videos. Bye guys.